Okay, I'm just going to go through my fuel system. As you guys know, I got the sump welded in with an extra bung there. Got dash 10 line to my pre-filter. Going around to the pump. Just mounted it on the bottom side of the spare tire thing here. I got the Holley pump. It's I'll put the part number in there. Out of the pump up to my post filter or after filter, what do you want to call it. I just followed the exact same routing of the stock fuel lines all the way up to the front. This is my return line coming in. Just comes to a fitting that's welded in the top corner of the tank. So then yeah, my fuel lines come up right to the front. I just run them through that little fender mount thing there. They come up. That's the return line coming off of my Holley fuel pressure regulator. I'll include the part number for that too. And then my main feed comes up to here, right to the fuel rail. A couple crossover fittings. This just clips onto the stock GM. I think it's 3/8 line, I'm not sure. And a crossover, and my dash 8. But the stock LS3 fuel rail has a jumper hose from the front of the fuel rail, both to the other side, and then has the same hose on the back. But I took that hose out on the back and I built my own. I put a T in the middle here, so it still jumps across from fuel rail to fuel rail. Then I got a T in here with my line going to my pressure regulator. So you feed your fuel rail first, and then it shows it going through the fuel rail and then coming out the end and then going to your pressure regulator. But this has a jumper hose on both sides, so I figure this will be sufficient. I did this loop instead of just going straight, so that when the engine torques over a bit or whatever, it's got some flex, because this is mounted solid. I'm gonna have to run a vacuum to full manifold vacuum. But yeah, that's the fuel system pretty much complete. I'm going to pop this off and just flush some fuel through it, just to make sure any cuttings or rubber dust from making these hoses gets flushed out. And then I'll do the same. Once I flush the main feed, I will flush everything back to the return. I'll pop the return off the tank and then flush that into a bucket too, just to make sure she's all good. Also got this little fuel pressure gauge, just a simple deal. You don't need the part number for that. One other thing I should have mentioned is these Holley pressure regulators, they got an inside and an outside, but it doesn't matter which way, the way they're designed, it doesn't matter which way you feed, you know? Like you can put the in on the outside, whatever it works for you best, right? They say you can cap this side and it'll still regulate the pressure exactly the same, because it's coming in, and then whatever it doesn't use is going down here back to the tank. So don't think I did that wrong. So I got my little heater core loop hose. I ordered that from Jegs. I ordered this lower rad hose from Jegs. I'll include all the part numbers at the end. This hose, it's got a million bends in it, but it's the perfect hose. You just cut off about 8 inches and it doesn't touch anywhere. It's mint. Top rad hose right there with a splice, and then I tied my steam vent into the bottom of that. I'll show you all the part numbers at the end for that too. But yeah, this just had a petcock drain in it. I pulled that out, 1/4 inch MBT, screwed in an NPT with a 90 with a nipple, tied it right onto the steam vent line. Boom, you're set. Got my Be Cool rad all in place and fastened. I just made my own little aluminum brackets and held it in. I tied it into this fan shroud. This is the stock fan shroud from the 2010 Camaro SS. All I did is trim up the sides, minor little trimming here and there, otherwise fits beautifully. So that's pretty nice. It's a dual fan setup. Got the plug here. I gotta wire it in yet, but that's that. Figured I'd show you the bottom of this fan shroud. I just made the same thing, little aluminum brackets. Used the stock holes in the radiator support. I got one underneath here. This was just where it sat in its pocket on the Camaro. I just trimmed off the little nipple, nice and flat, drilled a hole, mint. Same with this side, mint. And this corner I cut off up here just so it cleared this rad hose. Just sliced that corner off the fan shroud, no big deal. Notch the other side, just a little corner over there. Fuck all, really. It's a nice fit. Something I discovered while I was underneath this steering linkage, I guess you'd call it. It's pretty close here when the car was on the ground and the wheels were turned all the way to the driver's side. It was touching a little bit up there. You can see the mark there. So I'm probably just going to grind a little bit of material off of that just to make sure it doesn't rub on there. And yeah, that's the GM muscle pan right from GM. So it's got a little bit of a clearance issue. I don't know if that's my parts or just the way it was designed, but probably take 1/8 of an inch of material off there and it ain't gonna hurt nothing. Yeah, I was asking about this on the LS1 Tech forum, what these wires were going in here. I found out it's the IAT, which is intake air temperature, and they just tie into the, you can see there, it's like a light brown and a blue wire on the mass airflow sensor, and it ties onto the ends that go back to the engine or back to the computer. So the two that go to the mass airflow sensor just get abandoned and taped up. But yeah, that's what that is. One thing it says in the harness instructions from PSI is you really want to make sure your grounds are good. So I got a nice thick ground here, goes to the engine, to the frame on this side. I got another one on the other side, and I also have two that go to the body on the back of the heads. So don't cheap out on your grounds. And I got the Holley 5.75 inch power steering pulley, and I'll include the part number for that too at the end, but it looks like it's really gonna work good. All looks like it lines up nice. Okay, here's a little issue with this small pulley. I got the fitting here. It's the same one goes in the small port on the steering box. It's the same number fitting. I got Earl's ones at the end of my video. This is a Performance World fitting, but same thing. You reference the number and you get whatever brand you want. But I can't get it threaded in here with this small diameter pulley, so I'm just gonna pull the pulley off a little bit and then get this threaded in, and then I should be able to hook up my dash 6 lines to this, as long as the fittings that hook onto this are small enough to clear this small Holley pulley. But yeah, I'll show you that after I pull this pulley off a little bit and then put this fitting in there. So yeah, just a little tip, before you install this pulley all the way, you probably want to get your lines built. Ran into a little issue trying to pull off that pulley there. My pullers with that super small pulley, it's just tight. I had to take off a little bit of material, you can see on the outer edge there, just to thin up my pulley puller. So just a little hint, don't try and do it without it. It wanted to come off crooked and mar up the little tab on the front there. So ran into that issue. Okay, so I pulled the pulley out a little bit, put the fitting in, and then pushed the pulley back on, and there is a slight clearance issue with it rubbing just on the piece of the fitting there, and it's pretty tight. Like if I gotta get my 90 in there, I'll try it, but it's probably gonna rub too. There's a couple things I was thinking I can do here. I could probably grind down a bit of this fitting so it doesn't rub on this pulley, but there's a good chunk of meat on the back of this pulley. If you had a machine shop shave off a few thousandths, probably 3 or 4, maybe even 5 thousandths, I'm sure it wouldn't hurt nothing. or you could just try and grind it at home, might throw it out of balance. I don't know if that is a big deal or not, but yeah, there's a little issue there. So I'm going to think about what I'm going to do here. Well, that's what I decided to do. Just grind down the face of this pulley for the power steering a little bit. Hopefully it'll clear those fittings. Ended up getting it pretty true, and I'll splash on a little bit of black paint so it doesn't rust. So it looks like grinding a bit off the back of the pulley is what worked for me, and then just making sure this is positioned just the right way. I could have taken a little bit more off, just a little more. I had to file one little spot just to make it not touch, but yeah, that seems to be the trick. Just take a little bit off the back of that pulley. There's a lot of meat there to work with, so I'm sure it won't hurt anything. Yeah, and that looks to be my power steering system. I got the Earl's number fitting in there first, and then a 90-degree high pressure fitting. These hoses are tricky to make, but it wasn't too bad. And there's lots of clearance. Almost got my finger in there. Came straight off this one, went, I left an extra bit of hose, but I went right to the reservoir. And this is the one that goes to the tight one underneath. I believe that's the pressure line, pressure side. So yeah, looks like power steering's all set up. Well, I got my tranny cooler rigged in. Built all the lines and plumbed them into the TH350. There's a couple special fittings you got to use that come out of the TH350 tranny. I'll put a picture of the part number at the end there. But yeah, mounted it in front of the rad, and I'll put the intercooler in front of all that. Well, figured while I have all this stuff out, I'd show you the comparison of the new intercooler heat exchanger compared to the old one. This is the old one. It's a stock Magnuson kit one. It's relatively close in size. As you can see that way, this one's still bigger, but the big difference is the thickness. This thing's roughly 1.5 inches thick. This one here, it's an AFCO. Yeah, it's an AFCO stock setup for a Ford Raptor F-150. I just looked and looked for the biggest one I could find. That was it. It's also a dual pass, so I believe it comes in here and it goes through, and then it'll come down and go back through. So that's another bonus. That's gonna help keep that supercharger a lot cooler than the other one.